Trucking, got my chips cashed in. Keep trucking, like the Doodah Man. Together, more or less in line. Just keep trucking on.
All right, what's up? Welcome back. Today's showing up in your feed because it's the last Thursday of the month. Happens to be the very last day of the month, and that month is October, and that means today's Halloween. So happy Halloween if that's your thing. If you're going out there trick-or-treating, if you got kids going out there trick-or-treating, be careful out there. If you go out and you're too old, you could get arrested. So make sure you know your local ordinances. Don't need any 12-year-olds getting put in a cage for asking for some free candy now, do we? Anyway, today's the second installment, which means you can find today's show notes at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/GVQ02. And in those show notes, I think I'm going to link to a couple of past episodes, maybe some other things, and I'll put some pictures in there too, so you guys can see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about what's going on here. So last month we had a hen who was sitting on some eggs, and she's a first-time mother. She's probably, 2 years old at this point. She's getting on in age a little bit. She just never sat before, and she decided to sit. So let her try it with about a dozen eggs, and she managed to crack every single one. I'm not sure if it was her kind of nestling them down in with her beak and pecking at them a little hard, or if, when she got out and then she would jump back in, if she landed on them funny, or it was other hens trying to get in there and lay eggs. Sometimes I'd have to go in there and take new eggs out of the clutch that she was sitting on. So, I'm not sure. But anyway, they did not make it. I was able to turn that into something of a little science experiment. After a hen's been sitting on some eggs for a couple weeks, they start to develop. They start to change on the inside. And so rather than just toss the cracked eggs, we decided to open some of them up. And it was kind of interesting to see the different developmental stages. You always see it in books and on the internet, talk about life cycles, and everybody loves the life cycle of the chicken. Well, they got to see it, which was pretty cool. But like I said, none of them made it. So unfortunately, there are no new chicks from our stock, I guess you want to call it, the ones on our spot here. So hopefully we'll get some in the spring from some of the newer hens, buff rocks and partridge rocks, and some that are a little better at setting. We did order some broiler chickens, some of the Cornish crosses. Got them from Murray McMurray. I've always used them, even as a kid. That was who we used. And so I've kind of, stayed loyal. I just haven't looked elsewhere. I haven't seen elsewhere. So I may try someplace else next time. But I ordered 16 broilers just to see how things go. It's the first time we've ever done broiler chickens. We've done the heritage breeds. That's always kind of been my shtick. You get some of the heritage breeds. We buy the straight run, get 25 at a time and just get straight run. And, odds are you're going to get, 12 and 12 or whatever. And maybe not, but you should have at least a couple hens in there, I would imagine. Right. And the roosters you just put in the freezer. So this is the first time we're trying the broilers. And, I tell you, they are growing quite fast. They're plump. Very dense. If you are familiar with Murray McMurray, they give you a free chick with your order, and we got the free chick, and he is about half the size. I have a hard time saying no to free things like that. I'm already paying for these chicks. Send me another one. Why not? We'll see. We'll see what happens to it. We'll see what it comes out as. I think it's a silver-laced Wyandotte. My son's taken a liking to it, so hopefully it will survive. the first, we've had 2 of them on property here. The first one was a blue Andalusian rooster who I'm not sure what happened to him. He was kind of in between. He wasn't quite sure if he was a rooster or a hen for quite some time. And he ended up being not so friendly and spurred me in the leg one time. And it wasn't just a little nick. He dug that spur in there pretty deep, to the point where I actually went to the doctor and had to get a tetanus shot for a rooster spur. So he ended up in the crock pot fairly quickly. And the other one we got is a buttercup rooster. So hopefully this one will be a hen, but who knows? We'll see. I was talking to Daniel Weisgarber, who I had on in episode 25, homesteadsandhomeschools.com/025. And he's got quite a number of the broilers going at his place. Giving me a little advice here, talking, and it's kind of enjoyable thing. So if you guys got questions out there, you want to talk, whatever, shoot me a message. I'm always down. So hopefully I'd like to scale up eventually here and get into some bigger numbers, but we're gonna start small and see how it goes. Personally, I prefer the heritage meat, but my wife does not. And I think when it comes time to selling chicken meat, your typical consumer is used to the big plump Purdue breasts that they get at the grocery store that have been soaking in salted chicken broth for a week before they actually purchase them. So when they actually get a real bird, like a chicken that isn't raised on hormones and is normal, they're not quite sure what to do with it. So it's the end of October, which means this month we also saw the opening day of deer season. Archery started earlier on, and rifle season started on the 19th. I don't mess around with those bows and stuff. I can, I'm lucky if I get one with a gun, so I'm not wasting my time with the arrows. But I was out there all day, not all day. I was out there for the morning, on opening day, and it rained, and it was nothing. There was nothing out there. The woods was silent. Usually you hear some gunshots out there, some fellow hunters around you popping off, putting deer in the freezer. Not so. I didn't hear anything. So I've been out there a few times since, and I still have seen nothing. Hearing a few things more here and there, but we'll see. The rut should come around here as things start to cool down a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to put one in the freezer. There's nothing like some deer meat in the freezer. We do have a little bit of deer meat in the freezer already. And before you take my advice, before you listen, go check your local ordinances. Once again, you don't want to piss off the game warden. Those guys, they have more power than you'd believe, I think. And there are different laws from state to state. But so the beginning of the month, I was out there in the morning. It was probably about 7:00, and about when the sun comes up, and putting things in the car, getting ready for the day's errands, and I hear a horn. The guy just laid on the horn, and then I hear that thwack, something getting crunched, and the car didn't stop, and so it wasn't an accident, but the kids were waking up, so I threw them in the car. We went down to see what it was, and it was a deer, about a mile down the road from me, where they like to cross. One of them got clipped, and so I brought it home and put him in the freezer. I know some of you are like, "Oh God, roadkill!" But honestly, man, it's free meat, about 25, 30 pounds. It was just a little yearling, but got a couple hams in the back and front shoulder, some back straps, and most of the meat was salvageable. And when that happens, why not? It's just going to sit there. The vultures are going to get it. And sometimes you'll come across something happens and it's just too messy and you don't bother. So that day was a a good day. So we do have a little bit of venison in the freezer. And if anybody wants to come over for dinner and have some roadkill, you just let me know. Set you up with a room and you can come visit. So also with October, it's finally cooled down a little bit. Finally, it has cooled down. It's still hot. A couple weeks ago, it was 100 degrees out, but it's rained and it's getting cooler in the evenings down into the 50s. And it seems to be when that fog kind of rolls in and you get the heavy fog in the morning. It's about time that, fall is finally here. And so we actually got our fall garden in, which is just awesome. Makes me so happy to finally get back out there and put some stuff in the ground. For start, we got our most of our cold crops in now, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, broccoli, got some snow pea, Alaska peas. I don't know, they call them Alaska peas down here. They're the green shell peas, garden peas, and those are in. And so hopefully we'll see what comes of that. I threw in some zucchini, and we will see if that comes. We might be able to get a couple in before the frost comes, but I got the space, so why not give it a shot? It won't be any sort of seed crop, but might be able to get some small zucchini on there. And we got lots and lots of onions, some red onions, some yellow onions, and put them in. Kind of space things out as we put it in. Every other week or every week, we'll put something more of what we have in. And that's just because, man, you harvest a garden, you harvest a bunch of stuff. And when it all comes ripe at the same time, it is just, you got to freeze it. You got to can it. You got to dry it, whatever you're going to do with it. It's tough sometimes, you don't have the time to sit there and spend the whole week doing it. So if you space it out, you space out your planting, you can make things a little bit easier on yourself. And so that's what we've done. And we've put in, we got our onions and some of our other stuff like the cabbage and the broccoli get from the local nursery, get little plugs for individual plants for, I think it's like $5.50 for a bundle of 50 plants. So we've got almost 200 onions in at this point. And I know we did pretty well keeping the red onions this year. Put them in some pantyhose and strung them up in the garage, and they've done fairly well. The yellow onions are just a Granix hybrid, and they don't do quite so well for storage, but they sell a lot better at the farmer's market. And I forget what the exact distance is, but I live about 16 miles from the state designated perimeter of where you can grow, quote, Vidalia onions. I'm growing the same variety, the same hybrid as what gets grown down there, but I'm not allowed to call it Vidalia onion. And some of that has to do with the soil. The soil is what kind of gives it its sweetness. And most of my onions are sweet onions. I don't have any really hot yellow, really the acrid onions that you think of when you think of yellow onions. But because I don't live in that area, I cannot call them Vidalia onions. So I don't call them. They're might as well be Vidalia onions. And if you want to hear more about that, I kind of rambled on about that back in episode 14, I believe it was. homesteadsandhomeschools.com/014. I carried on a little bit about just the mess that is this ridiculous government protection of the onion world. But yeah, you can go check that out. And what else? Finally got out there, cut some firewood, cooled down a little bit, enough to do that, but it's still hot. Dragging logs around, it is still hot. And I tell you that, there's some things I miss about New England. Some things I don't. I don't miss the cold slush on your hands, trying to get firewood in the winter, when there's no leaves on the trees and you can skid logs across the snow. I don't miss that. That sucks. I do miss the lack of bugs. When I say bugs, I mean, your cockroaches, which are kind of just obnoxious. Your fire ants. God, I hate fire ants. I can't walk in the garden without coming across fire ants. I don't wear shoes, and I do to go to the store or whatever. My pair of Hirachis that I've made, but it's unbearable. They are nasty, nasty things. But the reason I say this about getting out there with a chainsaw, we got these wonderful little bugs called chiggers that will climb up to your nether regions and burrow themselves in. And when they do, they itch like nobody's business. And they are just, it's unbelievable how much it itches. And they just leave these red welts everywhere. And it is so, so uncomfortable. That I could leave behind. Hopefully I can get out there soon again and start bucking some logs and stacking it and splitting it and doing all that good nonsense. But be nice to get a deer in the freezer before I go out there and make a bunch of noise in the woods with a saw. So yeah, I think that's about it in terms of our animals and all our homesteading type stuff. But talking about homeschooling, this last unit I did with my son, and we were talking about immigration. And the curriculum we use is moving beyond the page. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I like it well enough, it recycle it down through the kids as it comes. So it's one of those things you only buy once and move along. And so we're talking about immigration, and we actually got into discussing, some of the pros and the cons of immigration, of our existing border policy, all of what that means for the individuals that are trying to cross borders, what that means for past individuals that have crossed borders, and what that means for businessmen and work people. If I want to hire someone to pick the onions in my field, someone's willing to do that work, why does it matter where they come from? And we had some good discussions, and my son actually kind of surprised me with some of the information he put out there and some of his feelings. And he was reading some articles from like Reason and stuff, and it made me proud as a father. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of neat to be able to have those discussions and talk about some people that I know. That guy came over, when he was a little kid. Him and his sister both applied for green cards at the same time. Put himself through college. Worked. Hard worker, great guy. And his sister got a green card, and he did not. And it was like a paperwork issue. And about a year ago, he got a call from ICE to go down and talk. And he thought he was getting his green card. And he went down and got put on a bus and shipped to Mexico. And he fought it for a little while, tried to wrangle through it. And I think he might still be, I'm not sure. But not too long ago, his wife and kids, who are U.S. citizens, moved to Mexico to be with him. And we got to talk about some of that stuff. And it's a interesting conversation to have. And it's one of those conversations I don't think you would have in a public school setting. And then my younger daughter was talking about wants and needs. And when I think about wants and needs, like, what are your needs, right? We have you get your Maslow's hierarchy, right? Your food, shelter, water, and even love, right? You kind of throw love in there, because without love, you can manage, but without any love, you're kind of gonna be hard pressed to be a contributing member to society, or to be a working member of society, or whatever you want to call it, to get along with other people. So we were talking about that, and the book that the curriculum is asking us to use talked about wants and needs. And in the vein of needs, it wasn't just food and shelter. It wasn't just love and water. And they also included education. And they included medical access. And it kind of put me off a little bit. It sounds really ugly to say that, medical care is not a need. right? Something you want. I think to some degree it is a need in the sense that you need to have some medical access to be healthy and happy and live a productive life. But at the same time, the way the book was portraying it was that it's almost a right, that having your medical needs met is a right, that everyone should be entitled to vaccines and to doctors and that business. And the same thing kind of with education. The education is this thing that you have to have if you want to be successful in the world. It didn't talk about, learning how to do things on the job at a mechanic shop or at a barber shop or a computer technician, anything like that. It all kind of comes from the industrial education complex. None of it actually comes from the free market, from actually being involved in the workplace. So it really kind of put me off. And we were able to discuss it a little bit. She's kind of too young to pick up on some of the subtleties, some of the nuance involved in it. But that doesn't change the fact that it kind of put me off. But anyway, for the most part, I do like the curriculum. One thing I will say is that using a curriculum, sometimes we just feel trapped almost, like you got a list of things you got to do. And if you don't get it done, then you didn't do the work for the day. And that's not always true. But sometimes you get stuck in those ruts. It's tough to break that sometimes. And having that curriculum almost looming over you, with a checklist of things is kind of takes things out of it a little bit. That's all for today. I hope you guys get out there and get some free candy. Make sure to thank your corn subsidies for all that cheap candy you get to give away. Steal some candy. Steal your kids' candy, It's taxing. Teach them about taxes, right? That's always fun to do. My son hates it, but hey, you live here, I took you there, these are the taxes. This is what you owe Caesar. So anyway, folks, appreciate it. Have a fun time. Have a good time. Enjoy your month. I will talk to you again like this at the end of November after Thanksgiving. And I hope you all have a good holiday, and I will see you on Tuesday. So get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap sheaves of freedom together.
I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream. I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream.